Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guest, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about the spiritual path we are on. Who are our guides? Who are our past masters? Who are the stories of eons ago? What are some ways in which we can influence and take a lot of their hopes, their words, their beliefs, and their inspiration of those enlightenment times and bring it forth into today, 2023, to be able to inspire us, to be able to guide us, or perhaps maybe even to say, it just feels so... it's just a kind of deep-seated, as we will use the word from the title, Zen. It feels good. It feels balanced. It feels focused. It just feels silent. What we're talking about are the stories of Buddha, the stories of Ignatius Loyola, also the stories of other Zen masters, and also about mindfulness. What is mindfulness all about? What is spirituality all about? And what is enlightenment all about? These words have been tossed around for the past several years, and people are saying, oh, I've got this. I'm up the ladder. I'm good. I got it to go. Yet it's a web of life. Different things come to us at different times. Different aspects of our life in this human moment are engaged and woven within our spiritual tapestry. It's about how we navigate, how we dance, how we engage, and nourish everything around us to just have a great quality of life. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Today my guest is Nora D'Ecclesis. Her book is Zen Rohatsu that we'll be talking about today. Nora, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
And deep bows to you, Dr. Jeanette, for having me. Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you to talk about this topic. As we are now embarking on the year 2023, many people are saying there's got to be a different way of life, or perhaps they've been hearing little glimpses of different words that are kind of opening up their awareness. Do you think perhaps we may be at the precipice of an awakening where more people are saying, I need to find a different way, and they want to live a different life? Perhaps?
Absolutely. And it's very obvious to me in 2023 that in addition to the quintessential New Year's resolutions, people might also be taking a look at this concept of spirituality. Mm-hmm. And spirituality is a very introspective assessment that might occur for them early in the year as they begin the new year with great hopes and dreams.
Absolutely, because we always come up on the topic in January of, we've just come off of Christmas and people are saying, but I don't do religion. Then others are saying, I don't do holidays. Others saying, I don't do this, I don't do that. And it kind of, it seems to be a more of a marketing time and a lot less of a religious time or a connection or a spiritual time or a season. Like it had been, my ancestors are all of European. So I know that they all had all of those traditions that were deep-seated in the season. You kind of now, we just run through it. And, people say Christmas is over in a day. And I'm like, I thought it was a season. I didn't know it was 124 hours, So I think when we start coming out of that, then we start looking at, then what is life about? What is spirituality? What are my beliefs, my awareness all about? And isn't that what we'll talk about today?
Absolutely. 37% of people in America identify as spiritual but not religious, to further complement the statement that you just made. Mm-hmm. However, there are 17 religions that are celebrated in the month of December, and all of them are beautiful and wonderful and, mm-hmm. In our hearts and souls, and can certainly be combined with spirituality if that's what the person chooses to do. The spirituality, as I define it, is an introspective assessment, but it's of the moral, ethical, and compassionate components of our life. It's not about the materialism in any way. So it certainly could be something that starts maybe in December, and that's one of the reasons that I chose Zen Rohatsu, not only as my title, but as the theme of the book that we're discussing. Zen Rohatsu is celebrated by Mahayana Zens on December the 8th. And mm-hmm. December the 8th is the celebration of the historical Buddha's enlightenment. So it's the 8th day of the 12th month.
Right. Isn't that also the Immaculate Conception in Catholic religion?
It is.
Yes.
It is.
I remember that date because that was the date that my sister had passed away before I was born. And it, I think we always think about the day, you have the day off in Catholic Church. You go to Catholic school and you don't go to school that day. But I think perhaps, do you think, Nora, that when people use the word spirituality these days, they're using it as a deferment language? In other words, they're saying, well, I don't do religion anymore, so I must be this. And they don't have a grasp on what the word spiritual means because they haven't delved deeper into themselves or into the concept of the universal, the universal sense of life living as a web, of everything all being interconnected. And they're still living in a silo, kind of spiritual silo. I know I've seen this happen probably over the last 10 years, is that people say, yes, I'm spiritual, and then they'll be going down the street, well, I don't need to give you money, I'm just gonna cast you some prayers out. And I'm going, oh my gosh, don't cast that out on me, It's like I don't need it, don't do that. And it's I think the idea is that do we live in our silos, or are we still stuck in the form of self-protection and self-survival while using the word spirituality?
And that's one of the reasons, again, why I'm taking a very hard look at the concept, not only to define it, but maybe to motivate people to use it as a preface. I believe it's the first step, and I believe it's not only the preface to the first step, but also it's important to look at spirituality as something that is all-consuming, as you've just described, and it's mostly about compassion. Our discernment in the process of examining our own spirituality tells us that it's going to be a practice, and that would be 24/7, 365.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because you're honoring sleep, you're honoring self, you're honoring your food, your water, your breath, your silence, you're just being, and even nature around you, but even the people around you, even if they are or are not in alignment with your essence of that moment at the time. You're still honoring their deep sense of self, of everyone, right?
Absolutely. There's, that's a definitive statement. I include 4 concepts in the contemplative practice, and that would be mindfulness, equanimity, and interoception. But one of the reasons that Zen Rohatsu begins with a guided visualization of what it's like to sit zazen during the reenactment of the Buddha's enlightenment is because he was the primary source. And I think that's something that, that you're saying, I'm inferring that that's how you're taking this, that we really don't go back to the traditions. And the traditions are marvelous. The traditions in all religions and all philosophies, as I understand them, are a good place to study and learn from. I thought it was interesting that in 2014, maybe 2015, the NIH in America commissioned a study, and they were going to look at contemplative practice and the concept of mindfulness and spirituality. Mm-hmm. And that particular study, which took a deep look into mindfulness, said it's synergistic with Buddhism. You can't use the word equanimity without combining the word Buddhism someplace in the sentence. Right. So that was really a good confirmation of everything I've been doing for the past several decades.
Right. I think the idea is that people will say, but Buddha was a long time ago. Those essence, those beliefs, they're a long time ago. And, sometimes I think people forget to put the dots together, There's a lot of talk these days about, my past life, I was this or I was that or whatever. Well, if you go back far enough into your past lives, not your ancestral lineage that you're getting off of, that website, we're talking about where your soul has been in many eons. We have been in that enlightened process before. We have engaged in this knowing so much more of self. Do you think maybe, Nora, we are picking up and grasping at fragments that might be in our cosmos around us, so to speak? That's why it's a little easier for people to be able to start understanding what you're talking about in your book?
Yes, and if we connect the dots, that's exactly the essence of what I'm talking about in the book, because the concept of primary source helps definitively explain the concept, for example, of mindfulness. The word mindfulness is everywhere. It's like the word Zen. And yet no one is, really taking a hard look at what sitting Zazen is. So I describe that in the book. But mindfulness comes directly in the Noble Path, in the Eightfold Noble Path, as written, as we understand to be written by historical Buddha. It's in there, the word mindfulness. Mindfulness is a significant part. Meditation is a significant part. Compassion is a significant part. It didn't originate, in 1991. Mm-hmm. It's been true. Around. It brings to mind, and I'm not exactly a scholar on anything other than this particular topic, but it brings to mind the concept of there's really nothing new under the sun, Ecclesiastes.
Right. Yeah.
And, to understand that, I think, defines what you're saying. Nothing new under the sun. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again.
Yes.
And to go back and take a look at where some of these wonderful words, wonderful concepts, wonderful practices came from, I decided to take it from the perspective of the very first moment that historical Buddha stood up and said, I've got it. I understand the meaning of life. I understand exactly what we're doing wrong and how we can correct it. So he said, this is the problem and this is the prescription. And one of the things in his little prescription was the concept of mindfulness and compassion. So that's what the book is about. And it's a good historical look, I think, as evidenced by the fact that it was number one for a month, and it actually surpassed the book that prompted me to study Zen in school, which was Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. So there we were, right up there on Amazon together, and that was an exciting moment for me. Took a picture of it and, put it in my scrapbook because that was the definitive book when I was young. And although, he's been gone for many years, people continue to read his book. And I hope they will read mine side by side and take a look at the history of Zen, of Buddhism, of a specific type of Buddhism, by the way. Zen is just one small branch. So it's everybody's on the same path, though, in Zen, the way everyone's really on the same path in Christianity. They just take different services and different ways of approaching.
What I loved about your book was it has a lot of history. You talk about the father of Zen, you talk about Buddha, you give a lot of dates, you give a lot of concepts, beliefs, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which a lot of people are talking about these days, So sometimes people will say, I've looked through and I picked up some words that I might know therefore there's something for me to grasp onto to be able to further web my thoughts around. Because sometimes people say, I really don't have the words, I don't understand the language. But in your book, it eloquently has a lot of those language fragments that you can hold on to, do you think?
I hope so. And I've been at this, I've been talking about the book now for about 4 or 5 months, and it has been well received. For example, you mentioned the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the concept of the soul hovering for about 49 days. I lost a very dear cousin a few days ago, and I took a deep breath, and I reminded myself that in both Christianity, which says 40 days, and in Buddhism, which is 49 days, that is not the time. That is not the time to grieve. That is the time to communicate. That is the time to pray. That is the time to reflect, to meditate, and that's precisely what I'm doing. People will always, you always have people, comment on, well, it's just, you can't just cut it off at 49 days. Well, goodness. Right. But it's a good parameter, isn't it? It's a good way of saying, this is a good structure. I'll tell you, it works for me. It's that simple.
And that's the point, though, too, Nora, is that it works for you because there are many different concepts out there. I mean, I live in New Orleans. When somebody dies, we call it, they transitioned. We're going to enjoy and celebrate their life. We don't believe they ever go anywhere. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes the idea is that whatever works for you today, explore it, educate yourself, go into the history, find the stories, find all the information that you've shared in your book Zen, and be able to say, this is awesome, tell me more. And you might hold on to that concept for a year, 10 years, your lifetime, maybe a few decades, but then you might shape shift into a next concept. Because do you think, Nora, that in essence, it's not the only concept that regulates the web of life. It is a part of the tapestry, so to speak, as I would call it. It's a color of the thread, and everything else also coexists.
I like that. Very beautiful. Yes, I think that's one of the reasons I included a rather lengthy chapter on St. Ignatius and his Jesuits, because it's very important to understand that many years ago, 1500 or so, he wrote spiritual exercises. Let me repeat that, spiritual exercises. Right. He was talking about spirituality, and that was the title of, this incredible book. And he sent out his missionaries to do what missionaries do, particularly Christian missionaries. And what they came back with were the teachings of the Buddhists. What they came back with were the teachings and the concepts of meditation and mindfulness in a very positive way. And all of a sudden, they're coming back into the West, Western Europe. My ancestors are also from Western Europe. And it was being taught in Rome. It was being taught in Spain. It was being taught in the United Kingdom. Many, many years before anyone started coining the phrase. In America, actually, people really didn't use the term spirituality probably much before the end of World War II. But in fact, 100 years before that, there were many, many Buddhists arriving on the shores of California and living in the West, where the Zens really had a stronghold and continue to, of course, in their teachings of meditation, spirituality, and mindfulness.
It's so funny you said about, after World War II. Well, I went to Loyola University in New Orleans, being the Jesuit college, and, I was there in the 70s, and that was, less than 50 years past that time. And we think it's really, that's so far back. That's like, I don't know, eons or centuries back. And it really is not. I think we are so close, yet so far away from things. In other words, things that happened so important in the last maybe century or so, we've kind of dissed it and not even brought it into our own focus, because it's almost as if we've been running and running and running towards something, all the way up to the last year, the year 2022, run, and all of a sudden we got shut down, didn't we? It was called, hey, I'm pulling the rug out from under you. Your world has stopped. What are you going to do now? So it's almost as if the universal flow has some kind of mechanism in it that says, we're going to take you along this journey, but, we have to stop you here. You're just going to be burnt out. And when I read in your book, about the Jesuits, and I can distinctly remember going back to Loyola. I still live in New Orleans, but I don't hang out there anymore. But I had gone back, I think it was, 10, 20, maybe 40 years later, and I walked down the path, and there were all of these bricks that had the stories of the Jesuits, and they're what they believed in. And I can only remember one right now, but I had taken pictures of them. And the first one was to be in a life of service.
Yes.
And that really stuck the most out to me, because I've been in healthcare for over 6 decades. Everything I do is given. There's nothing comes back that I need, because I'm pretty much believe I'm cared for. But everything is given. Everything goes out. The forces are always out. And I think that when we talk about mindfulness and we talk about gratitude, we talk about exploring self or having a deeper connection, it is about being in service to the universe. Sometimes people think it's, I have to be in service because I need to go out and give out meals on Thanksgiving, and I did my part, and I'm going to check it off, and I'm going, oh dear, And sometimes the in-service is, well, maybe you can go over there and meditate for about an hour and just do your own thing. That's enough service, to the universe sometimes, because you're doing something that's an energy focused instead of doing something that's doing a disservice. Do you think sometimes we get confused in all of these stories that I just shared about service, disservice, mindfulness, gratitude, and we put a different Google definition on the word? And what you and I are sharing today is there is something more than that.
I don't think we get confused. I think we simply have not really done the practice, done the work. Those of us, who are still learning a lot about it, can take an important lesson from Ignatius. Let's go back to Ignatius Loyola for just a moment. Mm-hmm. Ignatius Loyola wanted to be a soldier. He was hit by a cannonball. He couldn't be. And then he had this incredible spiritual awakening with the realization that he wasn't educated. He went off to school and sat in grade school as a grown man. There he was, coming out of the Army, and sat there and realized that he wanted to then go to college and that he wanted to get a master's. And that's why there are so many colleges called Loyola or Xavier. He valued education. He valued the study of history. So not only did he teach us, but his life work was to explain the importance of looking at everything, taking a look at all of the concepts, all of the religions, and what the words actually meant. And the one word that comes up for me in almost every interview, people say, well, what's the most important between mindfulness and spirituality and, interoceptive behavior? And the word's equanimity. See, equanimity leads us to a better understanding of mindfulness. And yet defining equanimity in any way other than the way the Zens do is not as effective. So I look at it from the Zen perspective, and I see that it basically means it's the practice of underreacting, approaching things calmly. In fact, in the language of the Buddha, which was either Sanskrit or Pali, in Pali, equanimity means to look over. So to create equanimity in a situation where you don't want to get horribly depressed or incredibly elated, but you want to have balance, you take 10 steps back and become the observer. That's equanimity. And I'm making that as clear as I possibly can in the book Zen Rohatsu, in an attempt, to help people better understand it, but also to live it. It's loving kindness. It's impartial. It's even-mindedness. It's neutrality. It's so many things. All of which, by the way, do Google. They do an excellent job, I have to admit. But we put it together, and it's the practice, really, of not reacting, underreacting.
Right.
And that's a very passionate, involved way of perceiving things.
It's so interesting. You have written in your book, you wrote, he was a young man and a ladies' man who liked to party for Ignatius Loyola. And it's so funny. I mean, in New Orleans, come on. I mean, he's on the main street. He's only a few blocks from the French Quarter, So very much this area is about ladies, men, and wanting to party. And it's truly, too, it's so interesting. What else you said, too, is because you had said about, we were talking about the web of life and being exposed to everything. And when I went to Loyola, my degree at that time in the 70s was for dental hygiene. And I can remember the first year, we had to take zoology one semester. We had to take about flowers and all that other stuff the next semester. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. Why do I have to know a genus and a species of the dinosaurs? It really makes zero, it really just didn't work at all. And of course, I flunked all those courses, blah, blah, blah. But I went back and I took them at a different school and I learned something different about it. And we look back at it, and then 30 years later, I got a degree as a naturopathic doctor, which is all about herbs, flowers, and oils, and essence and homeopathy of animals and things like that. So I think sometimes we say, what are we meeting today in our life? How has it played out in the past? Can we see its engagement in the present? And perhaps maybe see if it's a setup to help us further expand in the future. Wouldn't that be some awesome way of approaching almost everything in our life? Because then we're living from our heart and our soul, believing that everything is in divine order. Everything is being presented to us that we need, and everything is there for us in abundance. Perhaps?
Oh, absolutely. And certainly your educational process is a definitive example of that. I think the concept of mindfulness is something that I might quote from my own life. One of the things we see, again, in the news a lot is mindful eating. Let's use that one, for example. It's sort of an interesting concept. And again, not very many people understand that, it came from a primary source and why and what that means. But if we take it back and, move forward just a little, now look at the definition in the book. A non-judgmental acceptance of the feelings that emerge in our thoughts and emotions.
Right.
Viewing in the moment. Okay, I'm sitting down to eat. It's a bowl of pasta. A non-judgmental acceptance rather than, oh my goodness, too many carbs. Oh,
right.
This is going to be terrible. Why am I eating this? And going on, rather than just making a plan. Making a wonderful plan in advance of the meal that says, I'm only going to eat this much, exactly the amount that's healthy for me. Guess who said that, since we're in New Orleans and talking about Ignatius?
Right.
Ignatius, because after his injury, he gained weight, and he said, if you plan your meal the night before, you don't gain weight. That's a long time ago that the man was talking about mindful eating. Right. Shouldn't we study what he said? Shouldn't we study what historical Buddha and all of the patriarchs and disciples said, and then accept them or reject them, or accept them and rule them out as not meaningful to us? But at least we're looking at all perspectives, getting us back to the concept of equanimity, taking a good, long, hard look, and enabling us to have better quality and quantity of life.
But also to the idea, just, as you were saying about the pasta, I think back Many times in my life, we didn't have money, and we really, truly just had a bag of white rice. And, when I had the kids and stuff, and I can distinctly remember they never knew that we were poor. My daughter said, well, it was 20 years later when someone said, man, you were really poor. And she says, no, we weren't. And they were like, yeah, you were. And I think sometimes the idea of the white rice bowl, it truly is something that, to me, it almost, it never felt a lack. It never felt negative. It always felt, oh, this is so awesome. It's warm. It's gentle. It's clear. It's white. It has no boundaries. It puffs up. It's almost as if it's a universal energy flow in a bowl of white rice. And I think sometimes if we can start to see and accept just that clean slate in every moment, wow, that's a real challenge for people. Try to eat white rice for an entire 30 days at every meal. Nothing else on it, just white rice. And to enjoy it and truly be engaging in the energy of it. Might you not start to shift your inner soul essence from just self and identity to perhaps the spiritual source energy?
During the week of Zen Rohatsu, white rice is served at every meal.
And I've always felt that with my kids, and the kids have always felt that too. We didn't even think twice about it. You know what I mean? It was just we were so connected to it, yeah.
I'm pescatarian, and it was an excellent experience for me. The vegetables, the white rice, sitting on a zafu, which is a small pillow that's seated pretty much on a larger pillow called a zabuton. You eat where you meditate. You sleep where you eat and meditate on those two pillows. You do it in a very traditional fashion, and you then go into meditation again, and then you do some walking meditation called Kinhin. It's a fabulous experience. It's a learning experience from this perspective. It's teaching how to survive in the chaos of something that atypical from your normal life. I loved it. I did it year after year after year. I went back for Zen Rohatsu.
I think the idea is that when you come from just a bowl of white rice with nothing else, no salt, no pepper, no butter, no oils, no nothing, whatever. It's just that. You come from the purest sense of you're nourishing only to be able to breathe for the next day. It's a very core experience. And I think sometimes people are saying, well, I need to go into the forest. I need to have to get some of those psychedelic mushrooms to have my experience, or I need to find some kind of shaman to take me on a journey, when in essence you are able to connect with something very deep inside of yourself, by sharing some of the ideas from your book, sharing some of the things we are talking about today from our experiences, and pick something, just try it for one day, maybe then a week, maybe then a month, and say, I'm just going to see what comes up for me, release all of the judgments and the beliefs, and explore the feelings and emotions, and find out what silence and what the noise of the universe have to say. Might that be our own way of creating our own enlightenment journey?
I don't see any reason why we couldn't define it that way, and it's one of the better definitions. Kudos to you on that. I tried during Rohatsu, and I'm going to use the word tried, to introduce the tea ceremony, the Japanese tea ceremony, to do precisely what you're describing. And that's a ritual. That's done according to a standard and structure, and you stir to the right, you might stir to the left, you clean the implements in advance, etc. But every single step you take is mindful. Every single step you take is meaningful and enables you to stay in the present. That's the way in which you stay in the present, because that's where we want to be. That's where I want to be. I can really only speak for myself, but mindfulness is in the present, never in the past, never in the future.
So I have a thought for you, Nora. So if we are in the present, in mindfulness, is not the ultimate beyond enlightenment, beyond that which we know and only source energy, is when mindfulness goes away and nothing has meaning, nothing has a belief or a story, nothing has an identity. Breath is the only thing there is. There isn't anything else. Isn't that the final step of the shift into the next, as we would say, next dimension? Isn't that the shift of the next mass awakening? Isn't that the shift of that which we are all seeking to come to that point?
From a Zen perspective, probably not. From a Zen perspective, which is the only area that I have any reasonable expertise, I think what they're really looking at is, how does it make me feel? You know, and that's interoceptive, and that's intimately connected to mindfulness. So to some degree, you know, what we would learn is the importance of the growling stomach, the importance of information from the body. And when we want to kick it up a notch, these are the processes by which we can understand our fears, our traumas, our depressions, and our anxiety. So yes, there is a level of that, but there's no transformation that's been described by the Buddha. Once you have achieved enlightenment, according to historical Buddha, it occurs as a result of the acceptance of the Eightfold Path, and understanding and acceptance of the Eightfold Path. And that's the essence. And it involves ethics. It involves morality. It involves a clear mind with no intoxicating substances. It involves meditation, concentration, and mindfulness. And that's about it. He didn't really address anything further than that. And, you know, that's where it stops.
Do you think perhaps he didn't address it because when you get to the next point, there is nothing to have, to be, to hold, to center on? It's just energy.
I think philosophically, he was a Hindu. Right. He was born and raised a Hindu, and I think that particular religion had a tremendous impact. He never knew that he would be called a Buddha. He never called his understanding of the path Buddhism. Therefore, you know, I think it wasn't addressed because there was no, remember, this is a long time before, let me think. Yeah, back probably only with the Hebrew religion, was the one that was most predominant in that area. And I don't think they really looked at anything other than their various religions and their regions geographically. So, it was a something, interestingly enough, he was never exposed to it either. As a prince, he was raised never to see death or illness, never to even know what the word was. So it was not what he was seeking. He was seeking as a man, not a god.
Yes.
Always as a man, to walk the earth and to walk it in an ethical, spiritual, and moral fashion, and to understand what causes misery. And what causes misery, according to him, is, the suffering of attaching to various and sundry things that he describes very eloquently.
Because, when you look back at the human existence is about, I've always said it on the show probably over a decade ago, your soul, your spirit, it intersected with another lineage. That's how you became created. That's how you have your name. That's how you have your ancestors and your familial line. However, it's a ball of glitter, and all of a sudden you jump into this wetsuit, so to speak, called the human vehicle. And then you get all these badges that are stuck to it that's your identity, where you've been, what you're doing, how you breathe, your emotions, all that stuff. And I think once you start getting to the point where your wetsuit is starting to dry rot and there's cracks and the filters are gone and you start to see things without all of that stuff in front of you, that's when you start to become more open, more expansive, more into spirituality, more into finding books like yours, more into saying there's something other than this paradigm that I believed that has been written about as the human story. We are no longer the human story. We are now the spiritually awakened human story. And yes. I think that's the concept. If we can hold on to it going, forward in the year 2023, that is where we are going to, versus if you look at the years 70s, and people started to get braces because their teeth were crooked. Then in the 80s, it was all about, having parties and being important. In the 90s, it was about looking important. Plastic surgery came around, So we've already gone through all of the human stuff. We are now saying, my human vehicle is dry rotted, I'm looking for something else, and I'm ready to burst open. And I think that's truly an exploration of your book, Zen Rohatsu, is about saying, let's explore something else, and this is a great guide to be able to start with, yes?
Well, I thank you for that. The word Zen itself means meditation, so I'll be ending 2022 the way I'll be starting 2023 in meditation. And for me, I sum it up really almost in one phrase. Learning about Zen and being a meditator, which is really all I am. I don't really teach it. I simply live it. It's learning to be calm during mental disquietude. Mm-hmm. Now, mental disquietude hit like a ton of bricks with this concept, this word, pandemic. And many people, many of my friends, and many of the people I used to work with, looked at the way in which I approached pandemic and said, how are you staying so calm? This is a very, aren't you terrified? I think that was the most common question. I was learning to be calm during the times of mental disquietude for the past 3 decades. Mm-hmm. So as I entered pandemic, it occurred to me I might want to share the way in which I was doing that, and that's why I wrote about this particular holiday, this particular type of enlightenment. There are many, and this particular style of meditation that has worked very well for me and for many others.
Well, Nora, it was such a pleasure to have you with us, because I think people are looking for tips to become inspired, to find hope, to find something else to be able to grab to, through that crack in their wetsuit in the ethers and say, come to me, tell me how. And that's what your book is all about. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
My name is really my website, Nora D'Ecclesis.com. I am on Amazon. I have written, 14 nonfiction books and 1 novel. And Nora D'Ecclesis Googled, or let me see, what would they call that? Search engine on Amazon would take you to my other work. I also teach how to write haiku and, some other fun books that they might enjoy, mostly nonfiction. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter. Again, with my name, Nora D'Ecclesis.
Very good. Well, Nora, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today. I think we truly are being able to say, I've heard those words before, and join in and be able to share her book. So we thank you so much for being with us today.
Kudos, and thank you to you. Be well.
If you'd like more information about Nora D'Ecclesis, again, her book is Zen Rohatsu, please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to her website for more information. And it is about saying there is a lot of stuff out there. There's so much information. There are so many things that you can connect to be able to help yourself be able to say, you know what, I'm just tired of the old ways. I just want to grow. I want to learn. I want to explore. That's really what we're all about. So enjoy your journey. Find some new tips, be inspired, and definitely have a great outlook every day and say, you know what, I don't know what's in front of me, put those feet down to the floor and say, welcome world, what you got for me today? Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit dr.jeanette-gallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.